it takes great courage to be free and stand in who we are. It's the work of our lifetime, really. Our intention here today is to empower you to be a full expression of the uniqueness of who you are, and to stop holding back um, based on ideas and ideals about yourself. And we're going to go into the reasons why we feel like we need to hold back.
And then how to recover from that. Yeah. So, our intentions are also to help you understand the roots of your self-suppression tendencies so that you can release that kind of conditioning and come forward in your life in ways that really work for you. And also, we intend to deepen your awakening by helping you align your feelings and your expressions with your unique embodiment. So, in other words, this is very much about you, not just in self-realization, but in self actualization and expression. Because if we can't actually feel safe to express, then we don't feel safe to even truly be ourselves. Because being ourselves and expressing absolutely go together. So, why do we hold ourselves back? Well, the fundamental reason that we hold ourselves back from speaking and living our truth is because we are in fear. And one of these forms of fear is fear of rejection. Another one is fear of, well, general crucifixion. Bad will happen if we are simply being true to ourselves. And this all stems from our childhood fears that we were not being loved or attended properly when we were just being ourselves. And so the lesson that we learned is it's not safe to be me. It's not safe to express what I need to express. It's not safe to come up with my own needs and my own, feelings. I have to hold myself back.
Another reason we hold ourselves back is based on the conditioning we received, especially as women, but I know as men as well, but the conditioning to be nice, to have harmony, um, to fit in, to not cause upsets, to be invisible, um, to not cause conflict, to not want to hurt anybody in any way. And Gabor Mate, the famous trauma therapist, says that this is exactly what causes autoimmune disease and cancer in people, especially in women. Um,
Hmm.
because when you say no, you have to put yourself forward and put forth your energy. And so many of us don't do that. And we hold back our no just to go along and adapt to the situation. We don't honor our needs, and we don't even know for a long time what our needs even are, or if we even have needs. And then there's just the feelings of unworthiness, of others' attention. We might be found out about who we really are if we really come forth, and we don't think we can handle that, or we shame ourselves. We think there's something bad about us at the core, and that if we come out with it, we'll be found out and shamed.
And it feels dangerous. We are so deeply conditioned with the fear of consequences if we speak our unique truth that it actually feels dangerous to speak our truth. And a lot of times we find ourselves kind of holding back, not really in the moment knowing why. It's kind of invisible in those moments. But I think when we dig down, we can find this fear that's under all of that and the basic issue that we don't feel safe to speak our truth. We tend to minimize, we tend to internalize the message that truth telling is disruptive or dangerous. And because it wasn't okay in our family situation, we become conditioned to associate truth telling with fear in general.
And also, it wasn't safe in our school situation. I mean, who of us could speak our truth in school? I wonder how many people ever did that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there was a heavy conditioning there where the whole class could be turned against you if the teacher has some issue with how you speak up, establishing how you're different from the others.
Yeah, and personally, I know my sister got so squashed in school. She was brilliant, and she just kept getting squashed more and more and more until there was very little left of her at such a young age.
Also, when we're in school, well, at least in our generation, when we were going through school, there was very little emotional awareness going on. So kids were really mean. And then we learned pretty quickly that if we're not fitting in with the kids, it can be incredibly painful
Yeah,
to be alive and to have to go to school every day.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we just squashed ourselves really small.
For these reasons and probably more we didn't think about. But it all keeps coming back down to fear and our belief that we can't handle feeling our fear. But it's important to understand that none of this means we've done anything wrong. We haven't done anything wrong. Because survival is our top priority, then during our childhood, we're just forced to cut off parts of ourselves, authentic parts of what we feel and who we are, in order to fit in and get the nurturance and the love that we need to survive and to thrive. But what happens is as we leave the house and we mature further, we start directly experiencing these very tragic costs of holding ourselves back. And the tragic costs of holding ourselves back are enormous, to say the least. And now we want to take a little time to go into them. We've broken them down to some major categories, so we'll get into them right now.
So the first one we're going to talk about is the physical health and personal energy cost of holding ourselves back. And it takes tremendous life force energy to repress truth because we're designed to live our truth, not hold it down. Chronic self-suppression creates exhaustion, dullness, a lack of vitality, which affects everything in our lives. Um, Saying yes when we mean no accumulates toxicity in our bodies. But our bodies really are always telling us how we feel. We just don't always know how to listen or how to cooperate with the cues that we get. Emotional cost. We hold ourselves back to avoid taking up space, to avoid being seen, to avoid being rejected, because we don't understand yet that it's okay to feel rejection. It's just a feeling, and it really won't kill us, even though we can really believe that it will. It's okay to feel anything. And so, because we don't feel it's okay to feel these certain feelings, we grow up with a victim mentality and we try to protect our freedom in the only way we know how. And not coming forth with who we are means we can't allow more of who we are to come on board. We can't allow all our parts, our gifts, our beauty, our uniqueness. And so we're deprived of all of our energy and the bigness that allows us to shine brightly here. And we are meant to shine brightly here. So it's an allowing process.
So if we believe we can't express our truth, we can't let ourselves feel. Because if we let ourselves feel what our truth is, we'll need to express it. That's just how we're designed to be. We're not designed to um, have life flow through us and stop. It wants to keep flowing as it comes through us, and that includes expressing the things that come through us. So if we stop ourselves from feeling what we feel, then we stop ourselves from being in touch with our emotional reality, our emotional existence, our emotional soul. Our emotions tell us what matters to us. If we have a reaction that says, no, that's not okay, well, that tells you I value myself, I matter too, and it's not okay for you to step over my boundaries. But if we don't speak our truth, if we hold back from speaking our emotional truth, we are directly harming our own connection with our emotional truth. We're hurting ourselves. We're at war with ourselves.
Can I just add
Now,
one thing?
mm,
Because I think we forget that, life is flowing through us. Life is creating everything that we experience internally for sure. So life is creating our experience. Life is giving it all to us. So it's good. It's good to feel it. It's good to honor it.
yeah.
It's directly from the source.
And when we don't feel what's coming through us, we end up getting anxious and depressed and lost and out of touch. And that's not good. And it doesn't help the awakening process. So there's also a mental cost to this. When we've lost our connection with our feeling nature, which tells us what matters and how to respond to life, then the mind steps in and says, well, since you lost that connection, I'll help you out by helping you make important decisions and figure out how to run your life. And we all know what a tragic problem that becomes because the mind is not designed for that function and it's lousy at making decisions. The mind is great at just seeing all sides of things and trying to intellectually understand and symbolize what's happening so that we can make predictions and get things done and avoid certain kinds of physical dangers. But when the mind has taken over our emotional life and then we feel like we're feeling things with our mind, and people, we often have this experience. We ask people what they're feeling, and they said, well, I think I'm this and that. And it's really obvious that a lot of people, most of us really, have been deeply conditioned to think our feelings instead of feel our feelings. And the cost of that is we end up identified with our head and our thoughts, and we end up using our mind to defend ourselves from discomforts rather than using our mind to serve the world with our gifts. And that goes directly against what we're here for. So again, it's another form of war. And then there's a further cost to our career. Career is just another word for the expression of our uniqueness in service to others. How we do that in our life is our career. When we hide what we feel and who we truly are, um, we're not expressing ourselves. We're not being authentic in the world. And this leads to all kinds of problems, not the least of which is we'll never be fulfilled doing forms of work that are not ours to do. So work just seems like drudgery and something we have to do for survival. Unfortunately, doing that is very bad for our survival, as we already discussed. Very bad for our health, and it's very bad for our mental and emotional state. So, when we dim our light, we avoid the very purpose that we are here for, which is to shine as who we truly and uniquely are. Now, there's also a spiritual cost. When we hold back our truth, the spirit of our being can't flow, and we become uninspired and uninterested in life. We can easily just sort of back away and become small and tell ourselves that it's okay, I've done everything I need to do, or whatever the excuse is. But those are just excuses. The spiritual cost of not living our truth is that our spiritual life stops growing if we can't speak our truth. And here, this is part of something I'm getting into more and more on a new website I'm building. I'm really getting into exposing what I call the myths of enlightenment. If you thought that enlightenment was about only awakening to consciousness and not expressing your human truth, then that's a spiritual bypass. You will be out of touch with the part of your whole infinite being that is finite, and human and limited, because it's all part of the same thing. Our human self and our infinite consciousness self is the same thing. There's just this human perception that we're different until we awaken to the fact that that's two sides of the same coin of who we are. So when we do not allow expression of our human self, we do not allow expression of our infinite self either. We can't even fully stabilize the realization of consciousness because we're so busy trying not to feel certain things or not to express certain things and denying the truth of who we are as human beings. So it's a direct conflict with spiritual development.
Then there's the relational cost. When we don't speak our truth, the people we're with don't really feel connected to us, and we don't really feel connected to us. They can sense our holdback, but they don't often know why. These things are kind of unconscious. And it can create a wall preventing real depth and empathic connection. And when we hold back, the people we're with hold back. And the result is a lack of true intimacy or friendship. We're not really there, and we're not really inviting the other to be there. Even if we are outwardly engaged, inwardly we can feel alone and isolated and kind of desolate because we want that deep connection with others. That's such a big part of why we're here.
Mhm. Yeah, and we need deep connections with others. Some people more than others, but one way or another, no person is an island. We don't exist independently.
And I think what we don't realize a lot of the time is that when we are sharing our truth, the other person is usually very drawn into us and feels a sense of relief, like they can be more of who they are too.
Mhm. Exactly. I mean, you've probably all had the experience that when you're in a group of some sort, and somebody speaks up some truth that a lot of other people were kind of holding back, it's a relief in the whole group, and everybody feels more permission to be honest. So, yeah, connection comes through being able to know and express our truth. Fundamentally, the whole being cost of these kinds of patterns is that we end up living at war with ourselves and at war with others and at war with life. We get conditioned into assuming that by stopping ourselves from expressing, that somehow that's going to prevent a problem, when in fact, it is the direct cause of this war. So we don't have to live in this war. We don't have to hold ourselves back. However, we will have to encounter the fact that it's scary to contemplate speaking our truth for lots of reasons that we've been conditioned to believe. And also, it's scary because it's true that a lot of people don't want to hear our truth. And that's okay. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Part of that has to do with the skill of how we come out with our truth. And part of it has to do with the people we're speaking our truth with. Because you don't have to speak your truth with everybody you run into. Um, there are certain parts of you that need to come out in the context of people who are here to receive your gifts from you. Mhm. And I also want to say that even this war is, when seen from a larger perspective, there's nothing wrong with it. This is actually part of the human development process. Until we actually have the experience of what it feels like to be at war with ourselves and others and the world, we don't, peace has no meaning. We wouldn't even know what that is. We know what peace is when we've experienced enough war with ourselves and with the world. Then we know that there's got to be a better way. And so we're here to say that there is a way to get out of that war completely, that the awakening process is a gradual way of exiting the war and learning to live in complete embrace of who we are and who others are and who it is, what it's like to just be human on this planet. the next piece we just want to get into a bit is how to heal from this war. And it starts with understanding our situation, understanding the war we've been in. Getting that embodied awakening requires our full participation and our expression. We have to get to the point of decaying out of believing that avoiding things that are uncomfortable and painful will bring peace, happiness, or fulfillment. In other words, we've got to drop our myths of enlightenment and begin to discover that the embrace of everything, not just the things we like or want, but the embrace of all of the truth of life is what really brings peace, happiness, and fulfillment. Also, this process requires courage. It requires the courage to feel our pain and the weight of our conditioning and the weight of the suffering on the planet, the weight of our suffering and everybody's suffering. If we can't feel it, we're not really here. We're not present.
And the courage to give ourselves at this point the confidence that we probably never received in childhood to start to come forth. I mean, I maybe 15 years ago, I had a private session with a famous spiritual guide. And he said to me, "What are the three things that you wish you had been told in your childhood that you were never told?" And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "I know you can do this." And I tell myself that a lot. I know you can do this because I never got that confidence
Mhm.
to know I could do this.
So there's another reason we hold ourselves back. We're afraid we're going to fail, which comes back to rejection again.
But yeah, there's a fear of failing, but there's also a fear that we don't even think we can because we never had a template for it. So we don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. So this process of coming out of this war is not about bypassing our human truth. It's not about transcending anything for the sake of going to a happy place so that we could just live there, because that's not real. You know, we can transcend and we can experience consciousness and we can try to absorb ourselves in the bliss of it. And yeah, that's true. And that's always there. And our bodies are here in this world at the same time. And if we're not attending to the truth of our bodies and the needs of our bodies and the needs of relationship, including the need to know what feels true in our bodies and to express it, then if we're not practicing that, we're still we're still not really awakening. We're still just kind of slowly coming to the realization that avoidance doesn't bring us awakening or happiness or fulfillment. So the more we speak our truth, the more we reclaim the suppressed parts of ourselves. And the more we value and express our truth, the more others value and express our truth and keep inviting us to come forward. And the energy that was frozen becomes energy available for joy, creativity, love, power, connection, and fulfillment of our purpose.
And also, awakening involves discovering that safety does not come from others accepting us, but from self-love and our own acceptance of ourselves. And very gradually, that the opinions of others become less and less important to us. And what becomes more and more important is our need to be here more fully, to have more of ourself here.
Which is not to say that we don't need the love of others. It's just to say that until we sort of get our own tank filled with the love of others enough, we don't even know how to love ourselves until we get enough of a template for receiving love. We don't even know what it is. So it is necessary to have love of others. And then you get to a certain point where you've received a sufficient amount of love from others that you become confident in loving yourself. And when you love yourself, it's a different life because you're not so afraid of being rejected by others. If they reject me, okay, that'll hurt, but it's all right.
Right.
My survival is not at stake.
Right. I'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the rejection thing, it's like it's what it turns into is when you get to this place where when people reject you, the response is more like, "Oh, okay, well that, I'm not here. That person is not necessarily part of who I'm here to bring my gifts to." Um, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me when it's rejected. What it means is I may not be with the right people that I'm here to help with my gifts. So it's really important. It's kind of to get this because it's like when you go to the grocery store, you're not supposed to like all the vegetables and eat all the vegetables that are there. Some vegetables are really bad. Some may actually give you horrible allergic reactions. So, you don't have to be with all these vegetables and you don't have to be with all the people. We're not supposed to. And if you're getting rejected, don't be with these people. Love yourself and find the people who love you. So, basically, in closing, we just kind of want to invite you to find more confidence in your truth. Be more willing to be courageous in speaking your truth. We can talk in the conversation more about how you can be skillful in speaking your truth, how you can be more vulnerable, how you can do your best to stand in your truth in ways that work in relationship. But basically, be interested in this whole thing. Be interested in what's got you conditioned to hold yourself back. Notice the actual cost for you of holding back. And the more you notice that, and the more you get that you don't have to be that way, and you're going to be way happier not being that way, the more you'll have courage to step forward and be honest and just be who you are.
And also, the more regarding our awakening process and how that is affected by our holding back. Um, and I know this very personally. When we start to come forth more and more and more, being helps us. Being wants that for us. And so we get stronger and stronger. Our energy gets stronger. Our transmission gets stronger. What we're giving to others gets stronger. Um, Being really wants to support this in us, to
Hmm.
be all of who we are.